I buckled the urn into the front seat of the car and I strapped it in tight. It was about this big. It was a beautiful shade of blue. You know that color that's the sky and the ocean mixed together? But more importantly, it was the color of Dave's eyes. You see, that urn had been crafted and made in Key West, Florida. And in May of 2003, Dave and I got married there. And that blue was the color of my happiness. Because for the next 12 to 13 years or so, Dave and I were married so happily until he died suddenly and tragically in late December of 2015. It was just me and the urn in the dead of winter in the middle of January, a few months later in 2016. I was in a house that was silent and empty. I was in shock and grief, and I can't remember a lot of those days, but what I can remember is that I took the urn with me from room to room. I took it to bed when I went to bed and put it on the nightstand beside me. In the morning, I would bring it out, and I would put it on the kitchen table as I made the coffee, and it wasn't my job to make the coffee. It was Dave's. But I grew attached to it. And those dark days of January were horrible. I could only find respite in moments when I would think of Dave and I when we would travel. And I would look at pictures. And I began to feel like I wanted to be able to take some of his ashes and spread them. And so that's why I strapped him into the car that day. And I drove to the funeral home. And I walked in, and I set it on the receptionist's desk, and I said, I want some travel urns. I want some ashes transferred. And she looked at me, and she asked me some questions about it, and I said, I don't care. I just want them to be small enough that I can hide in a suitcase. So I walked out a few hours later with the urn, strapped it back in, and I had 2 travel urns in the cup holder beside me. Now, as the days and the weeks passed and the snow started to melt, I started to feel this anxiety. I could not bear to think about burying that urn. I couldn't bear to think about burying Dave, and I grew more and more attached to the urn. And I thought about our life together, and I thought about all the things that we had experienced. And we were unable to bury that urn because there had been such a big, hard winter. And the weeks passed, and the weeks passed. But as the snow started to melt and we got towards thaw, I started to get anxious and nervous. I didn't know what to do. So I put the urn back into the car. I strapped it back in. And as I backed out of the driveway, I put my hand on it, and I drove like this. Because that was how I always drove when Dave was here with me. We loved to road trip. We traveled all over. And there were so many times when I would sit like this and hold his hand, and we would talk and sing and laugh. Because he was so happy to ride shotgun with me. So I drove back to the funeral home. I walked back in, cradling the urn, the big blue urn, and I sat it onto the receptionist's desk. She looked up at me again with this look of sadness and uncertainty and what now on her face. She didn't say anything to me. She picked up the phone and she called for Glenn, the funeral director. He came out. I picked up the urn. I walked to him and I said, Glenn, I cannot bury this urn. I cannot bury Dave. The only thing I can bury is the thing that he hated most about himself, and those were his feet. They were long and they were thin and they were white and they were hairy, and he hated them. So I need you to take his feet out of this urn and get me another urn. And to his credit, he took the urn, he nodded, as if what I was asking made the most perfect sense in the entire world. 3 weeks later, on a cold, windy day in April, after the thaw had melted the ground enough, we had a burial. Dave's feet got buried. And in the weeks and the years that have passed since that day, I have traveled many, many miles. I have hid those little urns in suitcases, and I have spread Dave's ashes at sunset and sunrise in Key West, at sunset on the beach at Sandbridge, in the Chesapeake Bay off the coast of Kent Island, and in Spring Creek where he floated down. Now, where's the urn? I still have it. The big blue urn sits in our library, and I can tell you that most days when I'm in that room, I don't even pay attention to it anymore. But in 3 weeks, it'll be 10 years since that horrible day when he died. But what I can tell you is when I get in the car, and I still have the car that he loved, she's got 250,000 miles on her, and we are going to drive it until the wheels come off. But I drive like this, and I can still feel his spirit riding shotgun beside me. Thank you.